Imagine planning the perfect life with someone, only to discover it was all a lie. 3 years of love, trust, and dreams, shattered in a single night. What would you do if the person you thought was your forever turned out to be a stranger? This is my story: betrayal, heartbreak, and the journey to rediscover myself. From shocking revelations to public meltdowns and even years of unexpected obsession, I've been through it all. But here's the twist. This isn't just about what was lost, it's about what was found. Stick around, because by the end of this story, you might just see betrayal in a whole new light. It was the kind of romance that makes you believe in fate, or at least that's what I thought. Luna and I had been inseparable for 3 years. She was dazzling in every way, ambitious, intelligent, and with this laugh that could light up a room. I still remember the moment I proposed to her, kneeling in the warm sand of Cabo's pristine beaches. She cried, and I swear I felt like the luckiest guy alive. We started planning the wedding almost immediately. Summer 2020 was supposed to be our summer, a celebration of love. But looking back, it's almost poetic how something so perfect could mask what was to come. If only I'd known then what I know now. We weren't just partners in love. We were a team. Our careers were flourishing and we always supported each other. Luna was a rising star in marketing, while I was climbing the corporate ladder in finance. I used to joke that we were the power couple of our group of friends. From the outside looking in, everything seemed perfect. But perfection, I've learned, is often a fragile illusion. Maybe I missed the signs, or maybe I didn't want to see them. Isn't it funny how love can blind you to what's right in front of you? There were nights I'd sit back and marvel at how lucky I was. But deep down, there were moments when I wondered if Luna felt the same. She had a way of getting lost in her thoughts, and sometimes I'd catch her staring off as if she were carrying a secret. I never pushed her. Trust was the foundation of everything we'd built, or so I believed. Little did I know, those fleeting moments of doubt would soon spiral into a truth I wasn't ready to face. It was one of those pivotal nights where everything had to go perfectly. Luna had been working on this major corporate event for months, and I could see the pressure weighing her down. Sleepless nights, constant phone calls, and the endless stream of emails. It was exhausting just to watch. So, I stepped in. From picking up her dry cleaning to reheating takeout while she rehearsed her speech, I made it my mission to make things easier for her. She was grateful, or at least she seemed to be. Her smile that night, just before heading to the event, made all the effort feel worth it. I genuinely believed we were stronger for it. The event was a masterpiece. Watching Luna command the stage, effortlessly charming the room, made me feel like the proudest fiancé in the world. People clapped, congratulated her, and sang her praises throughout the evening. She pulled me aside at one point, her eyes shining with excitement, and whispered, "I couldn't have done this without you." I held on to those words, thinking they were proof of how solid we were as a couple. I thought, this is what love looks like, being there for each other when it matters most. But looking back, I can't help but wonder if those moments were as genuine as they felt. Was I her rock, or was I just convenient? Sometimes, when someone's juggling too much, they can lose track of what or who really matters. That night, I thought I was her anchor, grounding her through the chaos. Turns out, I was holding onto a storm I couldn't see brewing, and it wasn't long before it swept me away. That night started so innocently. A few drinks with friends, laughter, and stories that stretched late into the evening. On my way home, I felt this sudden urge to surprise Luna. It wasn't planned. I just wanted to see her, to end the night with her warm smile. As I parked outside her apartment, I remember thinking how lucky I was to have someone like her waiting for me. But nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to walk into. The apartment was eerily quiet when I stepped inside. I didn't call out her name. I wanted to catch her off guard, maybe with a silly joke about how unpredictable I was. But as I made my way to the bedroom, the faint sounds I heard stopped me in my tracks. My chest tightened, and my mind scrambled for explanations that could make sense of the scene unfolding before me. There she was, with Tyler, her colleague, the kind of moment you can't unsee. My heart didn't just break, it shattered. I froze, 1,000 thoughts crashing into me at once. Anger, betrayal, confusion, but mostly disbelief. Instinct kicked in, and before I could even think, I pulled out my phone. I don't know why. I wasn't planning revenge, just proof that this wasn't some twisted nightmare. The sound of the door slamming behind me was my only goodbye. And as I walked away, the life I thought I knew crumbled with every step. But the worst was still to come. The drive home felt like an out-of-body experience. My hands gripped the steering wheel, white-knuckled, as my mind raced with fragments of what I'd just seen. My chest felt hollow, but at the same time, it burned. I replayed it over and over like some cruel loop that wouldn't let me breathe. The photos and videos on my phone were proof, but every fiber of me wished they didn't exist. I needed to hold on to something real, something tangible, but all I felt was the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. Once I got home, I paced back and forth, my thoughts in chaos. Should I confront her? Should I delete the evidence and pretend it didn't happen? The rational side of me said to stay calm, but the storm inside wouldn't settle. I kept staring at my phone. The images burned into my memory. Slamming the door earlier wasn't enough. It felt too passive. But what else could I do? I wanted her to know I knew, even if I couldn't bring myself to say it yet. Sleep didn't come that night. Instead, I sat in the dark, replaying every moment of our relationship and questioning everything. Was I blind, or was she just that good at hiding it? My chest ached, but not in a way tears could fix. This wasn't just heartbreak. It was betrayal at its core. And while I didn't know it at the time, that moment marked the beginning of my journey to reclaim the pieces of myself she'd shattered. The next morning, my phone buzzed with her name lighting up the screen. Her texts were painfully casual, as if last night hadn't happened. "Morning, hope you had fun with your friends." That was her first message. I stared at it, feeling a mix of disgust and disbelief. Did she really think she could just sweep everything under the rug? The nerve of it all made my blood boil. For a moment, I considered ignoring her entirely, but something inside me demanded closure, demanded justice. I scrolled through the photos and videos on my phone, my hands trembling. It wasn't revenge, it was accountability. I attached the files to a message and typed a single sentence. "Explain this." Before I could second-guess myself, I hit send. The satisfaction of delivering the truth directly to her felt fleeting, but necessary. I didn't wait for her response. Blocking her number immediately afterward was my way of reclaiming some control in a situation where I'd lost so much. The silence that followed was both deafening and liberating. For the first time, she couldn't twist the narrative or deny the reality of her actions. I didn't need an apology or an excuse. I needed distance. And as I stared at the empty chat screen before deleting it entirely, I realized that no matter what she said or did, there was no going back. This was the end, but it was also the start of something new, or so I hoped. The days that followed were a blur. I barely ate, barely slept. The weight of everything seemed to press down on me all at once. My apartment, once a safe space, now felt suffocating, haunted by memories of us. Every corner, every item seemed to whisper her name. I couldn't take it, so the first thing I did was change the locks. It felt symbolic, securing not just my home, but the fragments of myself she'd left shattered. I needed to reclaim my space, my life, and most importantly, my peace. My family became my lifeline. I hadn't planned to tell them everything, but as soon as I walked through my parents' door, the tears came rushing out. They didn't push, didn't ask for details. They just listened. That's the thing about family. They don't need all the pieces to understand you're broken. I spent days there, soaking in their unconditional support and the comfort of being somewhere that didn't remind me of her. It was the first time in weeks I felt like I could breathe again. Still, the nights were the hardest. That's when the loneliness crept in, reminding me of what I thought I had and how quickly it was taken away. But even in those quiet, painful hours, I made a decision. This wasn't going to define me. Slowly, I began building a new routine, something that didn't revolve around her. It was small steps, sure, but each one felt like a tiny victory in a war I wasn't ready to lose. At first, it was silence, and I thought I'd finally found peace. But then, the messages started. They weren't apologies or explanations. At least not ones that made sense. Luna's texts were scattered and chaotic, jumping from remorseful pleas to sharp accusations. "I miss you. Can't we talk?" would suddenly shift to, "This is your fault." It was exhausting, like watching someone try to rewrite the ending of a story they'd already ruined. Each notification made my stomach churn, but I refused to respond. She wasn't going to pull me back into her web. As the weeks went on, her attempts grew more desperate. She sent long, rambling messages about how she'd made a mistake and wanted to fix things. Then, when I didn't reply, the tone shifted again. Insults, guilt-tripping, even vague threats. It was like she didn't know which version of herself might get through to me. But none of it worked. Each message only solidified what I already knew. The person I thought I loved didn't exist. This was someone else entirely. Blocking her number should have been the end of it, but Luna found other ways to reach out. Fake accounts, mutual friends. She tried everything to get a response. It was relentless, and yet there was something almost pitiful about it. She was unraveling, and part of me felt sorry for her, but not enough to give her what she wanted. If she thought her desperation would wear me down, she didn't know me at all. Months had passed, and I'd started to feel like I was finally regaining control of my life. I wasn't expecting to see her again, not like this at least. It happened at a mutual friends gathering, one of those rare occasions where avoiding her wasn't an option. The air in the room shifted the moment she spotted me. Her expression twisted, and I could feel the weight of her anger from across the room. I thought about leaving, but before I could decide, she made her move. She approached with a drink in her hand, her voice dripping with sarcasm as she called my name loud enough for everyone to hear. I kept my composure, responding with as much neutrality as I could muster. But then, out of nowhere, she snapped. Words turned into shouting, and before I knew it, her drink was flying through the air, soaking my shirt and staining the floor. Gasps echoed around us, the kind of sound that slices through any hope of a quiet exit. I stood there, drenched, stunned and embarrassed, while she stormed out, leaving chaos in her wake. That moment felt like a final nail in the coffin. Any shred of pity or forgiveness I might have felt for her was gone. It wasn't just about the betrayal anymore. It was about the sheer audacity, the inability to let go and move on. If I'd ever doubted my decision to cut ties completely, that public meltdown erased it. It was over, for good. Years passed, and I thought Luna had faded into the background of my life, just another chapter I'd closed. But then, out of nowhere, a mutual friend brought her up during a casual conversation. "Have you heard about Luna lately?" they asked, their tone hinting at something more. I hesitated, unsure if I wanted to know. Curiosity won out, and their words left me uneasy. Apparently she hadn't moved on. Instead, she had become bitter, almost obsessed with the past, specifically our past. They shared details I didn't want but couldn't ignore. She'd been talking about me, about us, as though time had stood still. The part that unsettled me most was her fixation on the idea of us having a family. She even mentioned wanting to have your child, they said with a nervous laugh, as though it was some absurd joke. But I couldn't laugh. It was strange, unsettling even, to think that she was still clinging to something I had let go of so long ago. Hearing that felt like a ghost from my past, clawing its way back into my present. Part of me wanted to dismiss it as irrelevant. She wasn't my problem anymore. But another part of me couldn't shake the unease. Her actions had always been unpredictable, and now it seemed like her obsession had taken on a new, darker tone. It reminded me of why I'd walked away in the first place. And while I didn't know what she'd do next, I knew one thing for sure: I wouldn't be a part of it. Looking back now, it's hard to believe how much has changed. There was a time when Luna occupied every corner of my mind, a presence I couldn't escape. But today, she's just a distant memory, a reminder of lessons learned the hard way. My focus has shifted entirely to my career, my goals, and the person I've become. The betrayal that once defined me now feels like a footnote in a much larger story. I didn't just survive it, I grew because of it. Still, there are moments when I reflect on how things might have turned out differently, not with regret, but with curiosity. I wonder if she's ever found peace, or if she's still chasing ghosts. People like Luna tend to live in their own version of reality, and as tempting as it is to judge, I remind myself that her journey isn't mine to figure out. I've learned to separate her actions from my worth, and that alone feels like victory enough. Now I focus on what's ahead. Life is calmer, simpler, and infinitely more fulfilling without the chaos. I've set boundaries that protect my peace, and I don't let anyone cross them anymore. What happened with Luna will always be a part of my story, but it doesn't define me. If anything, it's proof of how far I've come. And as for her, well, I wish her well from a safe distance.
Keep watching our stories by clicking on one of the videos that appear on the screen, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to be alerted about new videos. See you next time.